We are back. Caution to the Airwaves podcast. Take 3. No, that's just like take 3 on giving this podcast a go, but we're not giving it a go this time. We're just going. Coming off a great weekend. Good one to start on. UFC 292 in the bag. Sean O'Malley, Aljamain Sterling, headliners. Yeah, like what, and also going into a Max Holloway fight week, I feel like what better time to start the podcast back up. What's been going on? It's we're approaching fall time in New York here. Weather is beautiful outside. Football weather or football season is here. You know, if you know me, you know I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I got some Eagles stuff back here. Which, oh, by the way, too, we got a new, since last time, a few new updates to the background. I also had a birthday this past week, and shout out Rich, my mom's boyfriend, got this UFC glove signed by Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar has a son in wrestling. The son trains with a guy he knows in Jersey. So New Jersey's own Frankie Edgar, signed glove, added to the memorabilia. Obviously, we've always had the Nick Diaz signed picture, the Khabib sign, the Brian Dawkins sign. Now we just got to get Lomachenko to sign this. That would be sick. I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there just so I don't have to do this again, because I am proud of all this stuff. And sometimes I forget how lucky I am to have some of this stuff. Like this shirt. Speaking of, like, this is actually kind of a good segue or connection, I should say. But UFC 220 Boston, which this last card, this UFC 292 was in Boston. Me and my brother, I think I told this story before, but who cares? Me and my brother and his friend, during a snowstorm, I saw on social media the week leading into UFC 220, which was headlined by Stipe and Francis Ngannou. Big snowstorm. Middle of the week, we saw Khabib was doing a signing at the Reebok store, where they were also going to do the open workouts, and we were like, "Fuck it, let's go meet Khabib and check out these open workouts." And it was so sick. It was such a great time. I think the snowstorm made it not as packed with people, so we got right in there, met Khabib, got a picture of him. Maybe I'll post it, maybe I won't. I mean, or just check out my social media, but you can mark it down just in case. Got my good boy here, K Coast behind the 1s and 2s. Great guy, great producer, major talent. Music on the way. Maybe we'll start promoting that soon, right, Kerry? Maybe. But yeah, this shirt signed by DC and Stipe. DC was on that card fighting, what the hell, hold on. It's gonna, Ozdemir, Volkan Ozdemir. I was trying to get the name. Nowadays, there's so many of these, Polish fighters and fighters from that region with the same similar names. It's they get jumbled up sometimes. But Volkan Ozdemir, DC took on. Never forget my brother again. I got it on video too. Him patting DC in the belly as he walked by. That was funny. Got the style bender shirt. Oh, we got the T-shirt signed by Khabib too. I mean, this is cool. I mean, Khabib, at this point, one of the most famous Muslims of all time. At this point. Epic career, retired undefeated. I mean, come on, we all know Khabib at this point. So that is just a treasure in its own. Yeah, what else? And Lil Wayne Funko Pop, also a new addition. Lil Wayne, also a go in his own right. Yeah, I think that's it as far as got the New York Knicks. I mean, not as proud as that these days, but we're getting there. We're building towards something better, which shout out Big Nick's podcast, Big Nick Energy podcast, run by Vin Puglio and Joey Lindolfo. They talked about doing a collab, maybe doing some podcasts together. Yeah, all right. So I think this would be a good time to jump into this UFC 292 card. Like I said, it took place in Boston. The crowd was in full effect. The Irish fans were out in support of Ian Garry, and just in general, Boston, big Irish population. And man, the crowd was lit from the very first fight to the end. And it was a good card, a lot of good fights here. We had the Ultimate Fighter finalists sprinkled in the prelims. One of them won Fight of the Night. We'll get there shortly, but let's start with the main event. Sugar Sean O'Malley took on the champ Aljamain Funkmaster Sterling. And so, a very interesting matchup going into it. Aljamain becoming a better fighter each time he's out there. Came into this one looking shredded as usual, in shape. And a lot of people apparently were picking Aljamain to win, probably because of his elite style wrestling. Obviously, he was able to get it done with the wrestling against Henry Cejudo, former gold medalist in the Olympics for wrestling, former two-time champion Henry Cejudo. But then again, people forget that this is Henry Cejudo that retired after winning his last fight and becoming double champion, and as a move to try to get paid more, and that kind of backfired as far as the UFC business went. But he came off a long layoff going into that. So, and he was also rich at that point, doing very well for himself. Started a YouTube channel. He was comfortable. So I don't know if that was the best Henry Cejudo. He did look good in the fight, but either way, it was an impressive win nonetheless for Aljamain Sterling. And Aljo also coming off that trilogy with Petr Yan. Obviously, we know that the unfortunate first fight, how it ended with the illegal knee Petr Yan hit Sterling with. That's how Sterling becomes champion. Sterling gets a lot of heat for it because a lot of people thought he was faking it. And then he goes on for the rematch with Petr Yan, beats him in a close fight. And then that sets up the trilogy fight, which he wins more handily in that one. Which that alone just shows you how good Aljo is and how much better he had gotten from that. Oh, my little Doomski baby. It's hard to do. When the dogs pop in the picture, it's like hard for me not to acknowledge them. Maybe we'll get an appearance soon if they find their way over by my feet soon. Where's Yams? Is he over here too? He's usually around. No? Oh, sitting out there. Okay. Yeah, so Sean O'Malley also coming off a win against Petr Yan, which was impressive in his own right. Anyone, if you could get a win over Petr Yan, that says a lot about you. O'Malley, that was like that was his biggest test, I would say, of his UFC career. I mean, the guy is a talent in his own with his incredible movement and striking, which was the story of this one. And so this one, it was an interesting first round where a lot of feeling out Aljo, a lot of awkward movements, trying to pressure O'Malley to the side, couple takedown attempts. O'Malley was able to stuff those pretty easily. O'Malley kept the footwork going, was pretty much, it was really footwork all first round, pretty much avoiding anything Aljo had for him. O'Malley didn't really throw much, if anything, in the first round. Just kind of feeling him out and getting this distance set up. And then the second round came, and Aljamain, I think, came with the plan of, like, I'm going to really press him this time and try to get these takedowns, which led to him ultimately overextending himself and leaving himself open for just the most beautiful step back right hand that I've seen. It's pretty identical to the Conor McGregor Aldo knockout. Just a beautiful step back. Bam. You even saw the face of Aljo. Maybe we'll get a picture. Mark this. When he stepped back, Aljo missed completely, and you just saw Aljo's eye catch O'Malley throwing the punch, and he just closed his eyes knowing he was going to get rocked. And he did. He got rocked, and he got put down, and he tried to scramble to stay in the fight, and O'Malley was just relentless. A lot of ground and pound, a lot of hammer strikes. The ref had saw enough and just called it. It was a great win for Sean. Now Sean O'Malley is the champion of the world in the bantamweight division. And shout out O'Malley. I've been wearing this shirt a lot. I love this shirt, the Grateful Dead. But I wore this shirt on purpose to kind of for the O'Malley. This is like literally O'Malley's the color of his hair going into this fight. So I thought it was fitting to to wear this tie-dye style shirt. So shout out O'Malley. Everyone's saying now that he has reached superstar level. Now that he's become a champion, he is now the second Dana White Contender Series alum to become a champion. First being Jamal Hill, who just recently had to vacate his belt due to injury. So, yeah, a big milestone for O'Malley. O'Malley, after this one, admitted to be nervous coming into it. Interesting information that came out was that he was not able to grapple for the 6 weeks leading into this fight because of a rib injury of sorts, and to not be able to practice wrestling or hard MMA sparring 6 weeks leading into a fight with Aljamain Sterling, who's an elite wrestler, that's a big deal. And he said that was the cause of his extreme nerves going into this, which makes all the sense in the world. Could you imagine that you're fighting for the belt against an elite opponent, an elite wrestler, and you hurt yourself in a way where you can't train wrestling 6 weeks leading into it? And Aljo's a guy that you want to cross your T's and dot your I's with wrestling, make sure that you are prepared. And he still felt confident enough to stay in the fight, not have to train wrestling, not be able to spar, and still take the fight, and then win in the fashion he did. Very impressive from Sean O'Malley. I did call this as I did do a podcast last week. It didn't go as well. It was kind of a last minute thing put together. It just felt clunky. Didn't feel right. I want to start off on the right foot, and that was not the right foot. That was the left foot last week. And so I decided not to put it up. But I'm feeling better about this week. This week it was the right move, especially coming off 292. Very exciting stuff happening in this card. And also, here we go again with the MMA fighters calling out the big name boxers. O'Malley talking about wanting to one day box Gervonta Tank Davis. A big size difference in that one. Could it happen? Sure. And I don't know how that'll go, but just interesting to note. And as far as MMA and defending the belt, Chito Vera was on this card. He got a really nice win over Pedro Munhoz, which I'll talk about soon. And Chito Vera very much could be the next fight for O'Malley, which is a rematch. If people remember, O'Malley hurt his foot or his ankle and kind of was forced to not be able to stand. Oh, you know what it was? It was a dead leg or something. Yeah, he caught something weird and the nerve shut off his leg. It's called drop leg, they call it, and he wasn't able to stand on it well, so he had to cover up, and Chito ended up getting the win. And O'Malley famously says that he doesn't count that a win. He still thinks he's undefeated. He thinks that win was bullshit. And now Chito coming off this impressive win over Munhoz. This could be the next fight. Aljamain obviously wants an immediate rematch. Dana White didn't seem to entertain that too much, so I don't think we'll be seeing that. I think the Chito is probably very possible. You got Sandhagen out there coming off a win over Rob Font, which was an underwhelming performance, but ultimately still a win, and he has a lot of momentum. So I'm saying it's going to be Sandhagen or Chito. I like Chito. I like the storyline with that one, so I'm hoping it's Chito. But let's move on to the co-main event. Zhang WEILI. People that know me know that I'm a huge fan of Zhang WEILI. She is the epitome of mixed martial arts. She's a well-rounded fighter. She fights out of China. Very disciplined girl. Very cute, funny personality. Keeps it light outside the ring, but is just a monster in the ring. And never disappoints. Always in exciting fights. Always a joy to watch. As far as if you're into skills and technique and drive and everything that makes a great fighter, WEILI is. And she took on Amanda Lemos, who's a dog in her own right out of Brazil. And she came in. Lemos came into this one. I couldn't tell if it was nervous energy. I wouldn't say nervous. I thought maybe a little bit of nervous. I mean, how can you not be nervous? You're fighting one of the best female mixed martial artists of all time. This is your shot. You're in Boston, this and this and that. You can say all the things. The crowd was lit. The crowd was very much on WEILI's side as well. A lot of WEILI chants in this one. But Amanda deserves some respect. She threw up a couple scary submissions from the bottom that looked like WEILI might have been trapped in, notably in the first round. That one looked pretty tight. WEILI said it wasn't under the chin. She wasn't too worried about it. But this one was just pretty dominant after that. The first round was great, action-packed, and then from there it was pretty much all WEILI. Huge fight, huge strike differential in this one. WEILI just outstruck the shit out of Amanda Lemos, for lack of a better term, and just ultimately got it done with a very dominant win. So now coming out of this one, you got Tatiana Suarez, who is in attendance. She is coming off a big win of her own, a very dominant win. Tatiana Suarez undefeated, notably had to take off years for injury after injury after injury, but is now seems to be back and healthy and looks the best she's ever looked. That's a very interesting matchup. Tati's a big girl, big wrestler. I don't think her striking compares with WEILI at all. WEILI also a great grappler in her own. That's a great matchup. I love that matchup, actually. I probably want to see that next. That's what I would prefer. But WEILI is very close to being able to go up and fight for a second belt, which I think the UFC, if she asked for it, the UFC would totally do that. But I think WEILI, again, is just one of these mixed martial artists that is very much like, similar to like a Khabib or like a Islam, where like they're just very much like, I'm here, I'm training, whoever the UFC gives me is my next opponent, I will fight them. Tell me who's the best, put them in front of me and let's fight. That's kind of her attitude. And they tease a little UFC China coming back soon, maybe next year. So who knows? Maybe her next fight's in China. Maybe it's against Tati. Maybe it's against Yao Shanao, who's the other very talented Chinese fighter. Whatever it is, it's going to be big. WEILI's a star. I think someone said there was something like 1.9 billion views on social media from China for WEILI videos. Insane stuff. WEILI, another superstar. Superstars are being made left and right here, which is a perfect segue into the Coco main event, which was Ian Garry taking on Neil Magny. Ian Garry seeming like the next big thing coming out of Ireland. A lot of Irish fans in attendance, like I said, Boston crowd. Ian Garry, a lot of some heat going into this one with between the two. Neil Magny, something to do with Neil mentioning, like, just kind of like a soft mention, like just saying something about referring to, I didn't watch the press conference, but I think there was, like, he said something along the lines of disappointing his kid, and Ian Garry did not like the sound of that and was like, you should never, like, pretty much got mad at him, was like, you should never hit your kid, you're a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. And so I think that led to some tension going into this one between them. And Ian Garry, from start to finish, was very locked in. He achieved the flow state in that fight. He was taunting Neil Magny, flipping him off with the middle finger. Okay, I forgot to do the hand gesture. From now on, I'll do this to symbol. So you know, we don't have to get into it, but he knows what I'm talking about. And we'll post these gestures that Ian Garry was doing towards Neil Magny. He was yelling in his face after rounds. After the third round ended, he like kind of gave him a shove as he was getting up. Pretty nasty stuff. I really didn't care for it. I thought it was a little. How do you say it? Like bad sportsmanship. But either way, he looked great. The leg kicks were the story of this one. He basically could have finished him with leg kicks if he would have landed a few more. Neil was barely able to stand on his leg by the end of it. And Neil Magny, a guy that famously like makes these prospects, puts these prospects in their place. He's usually the prospect killer, but not this one. Ian Garry seems to be very real. The hype is real. And now they're talking about Dana wants to put him in MSG in November, which is right around the corner. You can only imagine that. So Ian Garry coming off a huge win in Boston, now to put him in Madison Square Garden. The Irish fans will be out again. The crowd will be lit. I might even find myself in that crowd. I've been to a couple MSGs at this point, and they never disappoint. I mean, worth the money. So If I have to break the bank to go to this one, I might. We'll see how that card goes. That's a card that John Jones should be fighting. Come on, why am I having a brain fart? John Jones. Yes, Stipe, yeah. Wow, how'd you know? Just, oh, interesting. The guy that doesn't even follow the sport is literally pointing out Stipe Miocic as John Jones. Interesting. We'll have to talk about that, how you knew that. That was kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, Stipe Miocic, which is an interesting matchup. Some people think it's going to be an easy one for John Jones. I think it's going to be harder than people. I think it's going to be a closer fight than people think. Stipe is a great grappler, great striker. John Jones definitely has the reach and all that, but probably the edge with the wrestling. So I can see why people say that, but I think it'll be, But for another time, we'll discuss that in the lead up to that. So Ian Garry could find himself on a John Jones MSG card, which would be huge nonetheless. So big shout out to Ian Garry. It's fun to have these new guys like really, explode on the scene. All right, so this was kind of interesting too. Ian Garry, after the fight, called out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, which I thought was the perfect call out, because Thompson is just, like right there when it comes to like their striking abilities. It would be such an interesting matchup to see one of the best strikers of all time, Wonderboy Thompson, with a karate background, take on Ian Garry with his kickboxing background, Muay Thai background, both elite strikers. That matchup, two good-looking, both like these blonde dudes that are just like, some of the best strikers to be in the octagon. That matchup is just very interesting. Ian Garry kind of taking on this evil role. Wonderboy Thompson, notably as one of the nicest guys in the game, or dare to say nicest motherfuckers in the game, like he self-proclaimed himself after they made the baddest motherfucker title. Which I was at that fight for the first ever baddest motherfucker with Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz, and then Wonderboy was on the undercard against Luque, who also got a win recently in the main event spot. So yeah, I would love to see that, but I never even finished my point. Wonderboy apparently declined the offer, so I guess they reached out to him right after the fight, and apparently Wonderboy declined. So I want to hear from Wonderboy what that's about. Maybe he just wasn't. Maybe Wonderboy is just not going to be ready for November. Maybe it's something like that. They didn't really specify what the reasoning was, but I'm very interested to know why. And I think that would have been the fight to make, but I'll give Wonderboy the benefit of the doubt. That's not a guy to turn down fights, and I think that would excite him. So I want to hear from him what that's about. Also in this card, we have Mario Bautista taking on Damon Blackshear. Cool storyline in this one. Damon Blackshear fought last Saturday. Damon Blackshear won with a twister submission. Third person ever to pull it off. Third ever twister in the UFC history. Very intricate, difficult submission to pull off. Essentially, it's like you lock down half their body with your legs from the side, and then you get you throw their arm over your neck, and you crank on their body. So you twist their top half of the body towards you while your legs lock their bottom half in place to stay still. So you're basically twisting the top half of their body, making it extremely uncomfortable. It looks horrendous. Maybe we'll post a picture of a twister. Some of the notable ones. Korean Zombie. It's funny how everything's just connected. Like I love this. I love the UFC. I love combat sports. The UFC. I was talking about this all week. The UFC just is second to none as far as fight promotion. They know how to get you excited from the first fight to the last fight, and they all have interesting storylines, and it's all like connected in some weird way, and they're not afraid to put the best against the best constantly. It's the matchmaking is amazing. It's usually perfect matchmaking. Where was I with this one? Losing my train of thought. The Twister. Oh yeah, so that's what I was gonna say is that next week we got Max Holloway taking on Korean Zombie, and Korean Zombie was the first person ever a long time ago in the UFC to pull off the Twister. So it's just funny how it's all connected. Other one being Bryce Mitchell, Arkansas boy. So yeah, moving on. Then we had the first fight of the card, which was Chito Vera. Like I mentioned earlier, took on Pedro Munhoz. This was a fun fight, very technical, striking. Pedro Munhoz was very aggressive from start to finish. Kind of was like the more volume puncher, volume striker. Chito Vera was very poised in the beginning, but just like had the speed advantage and the power advantage. Like his jabs were just beating up Pedro Munhoz's face. He was wearing it. Everything Pedro was landing, but Chito was not wearing. He wasn't showing any damage. So that just kind of gives you a good idea how a fight's going sometimes, even when the other guy's landing more. Sometimes, it's all about the damaging strikes. Like, damage is number one in judging, apparently. So, and that's why Chito Vera pretty much won this one 30-27. I think he won 30-27. Someone had one judge had it 29-28, but all three for Chito. So pretty decisive, solid win. Probably enough to give him a title shot. It's like I said, good storyline going into it with the rematch with Sean O'Malley. So I think that's going to be. That could be the next fight. It could be Chito Vera or Sean O'Malley, and I love it. Two big personalities, two big stars in the UFC. Sandhagen maybe gives him a chance to get that fight back with Nurmagomedov that fell out, and maybe if he gets that win, that definitely solidifies him a title shot. But we'll see what happens. So a lot of stuff could happen. And don't forget to, I also mentioned in I have here listed in my notes that Merab, we can't forget about Merab. Merab is out there, teammate with Aljamain Sterling, has been very patient letting Aljo be the champ. Just has mentioned not wanting to fight Aljo for those reasons. Obviously they're teammates, he doesn't want to do that. But now that Aljo's not the champ, Merab is in probably full force to go claim that belt. So, but obviously, again, he turned down the chance to fight him. Dana White doesn't like that. Maybe they start to penalize him and make him fight for another fight, which I'm sure they will. Maybe it'll be Merab and Corey Sandhagen. That right there should be it. It should be Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera. Maybe on the undercard you do Corey Sandhagen and Merab, and the winner fights the winner. So that sounds right. I like that. UFC needs to hire me as a matchmaker. I would make a great matchmaker. You put me in a room with the names and the rankings, I will make some matches. Maybe one day. We'll see. Maybe this podcast catches on. Maybe Dana White gets to know who I am. Maybe he gives me $100,000 like he gave the Nelk Boys for no reason. Who knows? Anything could happen in this crazy thing we call life. Big story, another big storyline in this one. Chris Weidman coming off a horrendous leg break to Uriah Hall, finger in the air. A lot of pictures in this one. Will I follow through? We'll see. But maybe I'm going to post this horrendous picture. I think this one's worth posting just for shock value. We'll post a horrendous picture of Weidman getting his leg broken. And it was a big, long, treacherous road back to health for him. 2.5 years before he was healthy enough to fight. Now here we are going into this one against Brad Tavares, who has some of the thickest legs in the UFC. I mean, another Hawaiian. All these Hawaiian Samoans are just born with tree trunk legs. I was calling them earth people last night. They're just like, they're earthbenders. They're just powerful human beings with powerful legs. And that is like, what a matchup to make for Chris Weidman coming back off his leg break. Like, let's put him against a guy with some of the most devastating leg kicks in the game, and with tree trunks for legs. And that's literally how he won. He kicked the shit out of Weidman's front leg, not the injured leg, but forced Weidman to switch stances and give that vulnerable leg up. But his good leg, his whatever you want, the good leg that he was leading with got so chewed up he could barely stand. They're talking about he probably had some MCL and ACL tears from that. He was in a wheelchair after. He stood up and had a nice picture with Brad Tavares after. Maybe we'll post this one too. It was a nice picture. A nice moment. Brad Tavares helped him out of the wheelchair. They stood up and took a picture together. That's all it was. But so Dana in the press conference said that he thinks that Weidman should retire. At this point, I kind of agree. The guy, notably, is a former champion. Again, this is another way that, like, how everything's connected and everything comes full circle. Weidman won the belt from knocking out Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva getting too goofy, caught him with the knockout. Big moment in the sports history. Chris Weidman becomes champion. They do a rematch. Anderson Silva breaks his leg on Chris Weidman the same way that Chris Weidman broke his leg in his last fight. So the way that Chris Weidman defended his belt and was champion once, the same thing happened to him, not for the belt, but broke his leg in the same way, which is such a freak accident in the sport. It's only happened a couple times. I mean, it has happened, and it makes sense how it can happen. It's surprising that it almost doesn't happen more, but that just comes with, I guess, discipline and technique and just knowing your body and proper times to strike and power and all that stuff. But so it's happened. Conor McGregor, not the exact same thing, but kind of the same thing, like a compound fracture, bone snaps in half type of deal. Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. I think there's a couple more out there, but those are the ones that stick out the most. And there was some bone sticking out in a couple of those too. But yeah, so Chris Weidman possibly on his way to retirement. It makes sense. He's a former champion, defended the belt a few times. One of the best middleweights that you could even say, and he's done it all. And at this point, with a horrific compound fracture, and now maybe tearing your ACL and MCL and having to wait a whole nother year before you fight again, you're getting up there in age. I think he's like right around 40 nowadays, and he had nothing left to prove. And go enjoy time with your beautiful family and live life happy, and maybe be involved with training, coaching, whatever you want to do. He's a good-looking guy. He's a smart guy. He's an intelligent guy, and he can literally do whatever he wants. And I'm sure he'll evaluate. He is a competitor. He's a bad motherfucker for even coming back off that last one. So very big props to him. We won't spend too much time on like the undercard, but just a few honorable mentions. RoboCop was on the prelims. Gregory Rodriguez took on a Russian fighter with a crazy last name. It doesn't even matter at this point. But he won via ground and pound, some vicious elbows from the top. Little controversy. Thought the first one that started off was a little behind the head. I didn't really see a reason for it to be a problem. I thought it was clean enough to not make a big deal over. But it was a great win and a vicious ground and pound. Two vicious elbows. That second one just totally turned his lights off. It was pretty insane. RoboCop, must see TV. I've been saying that leading into this one. This guy, anytime this guy fights, it's must watch TV. That's all. The Ultimate Fighter finale, the two matchup finalists were on the prelims as well. The bantamweights and the lightweights. The lightweights were Kurt Holloway against Austin Hubbard. Holloway won via submission in the second round. I love these kind of fights because it really brings out, like, when it's a tournament and you fight your way up to make it to the finalists, and then you're on a pay-per-view card. On the prelims on TV in front of a lot of eyes, and this is your chance to win a contract into the UFC. It brings out a fire in these fighters, and they come in, and all these guys that fought in the finale were in phenomenal shape. You felt the energy, you felt the velocity of it all. Like, it was just everything was high level and high caliber. It was just it was an honor to watch. So congrats to Kurt Hellebuyck, but more notably, Brad Katona and the Cody Gibson final fight, Ultimate Fighter finale. This one, fight of the night, deservingly so. These guys went at it, and it was back and forth, and Brad Katona, another Irish fighter, with John Kavanagh as his head coach, Conor McGregor's head coach, same gym. And it was back and forth. Cody Gibson was not going to be denied, and this is one of those two where Dana even said he's going to bring Cody Gibson into the UFC too. You can't watch that fight and not give Cody Gibson a contract as well. Sometimes when two fighters when they have a fight like that, they both earn their spots, and that's exactly what happened in this one. It was very close. Brad Katona at one point looked like he was dying out, and then he got a second wind, and then he came back, and then in the third round he looked amazing. He hurt Cody Gibson enough to that was the reason why they gave him the decision. And shout out both guys, because that was like I said, fight of the night, deservingly so. It was very entertaining. Me and my boy were going crazy watching it. Fun fight, technical fight, a lot of drive, a lot of heart. Neither guys gave up on each other. It was just one of those embodiments of what mixed martial arts is, especially like with high motivation going into it. Also, I just want to give a shout out to my girl Natalia Silva. This girl is looking just so good, so impressive. Took on Andrea Lee, which is a very worthy opponent, a very battle-tested opponent, a veteran. Has fought the who's who in her own right, and and Natalia Silva pretty much disposed of her with high-level striking. So I just have to give her a shout-out. She's one of these girls that, since she came up on the scene, I've just took an eye to, and again, I think she's must-see TV as well. She's so good. Her feints are incredible, so fast. Just the game is just evolving. The game is evolving, and I love it, and I'm here for it. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because that's how much I love it. That talking with my boys is not enough. Like I feel it's one of my favorite things to do is discuss the sport, and this includes like combat sports of all kinds, Muay Thai, boxing. I love it all. It's a different energy. It's a different type of sport compared to other sports. It's just different. It's in its own category. Some people even say it's not a sport. It's fighting. It's kill or be killed. So not to say that there's not not to say that there's not consequences, negative consequences in other sports with injuries and all that other stuff, with heart and determination. That's why we watch sports. It's all intermingled. Yes, so that wraps up UFC 292. Boston did not disappoint. The card did not disappoint. A lot of great fights. Can't wait to go back and rewatch a few. But let's talk about next week. Let's preview next week. If you know me, you know I love Max Holloway. I'll be wearing his merch next. I almost thought about doing it for this week, but I figured I'll rock out for O'Malley, because O'Malley was really the star of the weekend. So I thought I'd give O'Malley his flowers, his homage, or give my homage to O'Malley. But next week, it's Max Bless Holloway taking on Korean Zombie, a legend in his own right. This could be Korean Zombie's retirement fight. You almost hate to see like this be his retirement fight against Max. I mean, a lot of people are counting out Korean Zombie this one big time. Personally, me included, not just because I'm a Max Holloway fan. I just think that Zombie's better years are behind him. I think that he's probably going to come in motivated and want to go off on obviously you want to leave on a positive, and that's motivation in its own to train and come correct and be your best you. So you can never take out those factors, but Max is just a different kind of guy, a different kind of fighter. He is operating on a high level and has a chin like no other. Has never been knocked down once. Has never been finished That's a lie. He was submitted to by Dustin Poirier a long, long time ago when he was like 19 years old. But never been knocked down, and that alone, with the amount of time that he has in the octagon and the amount of fights he has under his belt to never be knocked down, the people he's fought, the Conor McGregors, the Dustin Poiriers, the fucking the Jose Aldos, the Calvin Caters, the Brian Ortegas, like the Frankie Eggers, like it just never ends with this guy. He's literally fought everybody. So can't wait. Love a Max Bless Holloway. I mean, you already know my pick on that. We go Maxi baby all day. Anthony Smith fighting Ryan Spann as the co-main event. This is a rematch. Anthony Smith falling on hard times, couple unfortunate losses, got close to a title fight again. Now he's coming off a little bit of a skid. So now they're putting him against Ryan Spann, who has fought his way back into the win column enough to get this rematch. Anthony Smith won by first round submission the first time. I think the motivation in this one is a little different than the first time, so I'm actually kind of leaning toward Ryan Spann in this one. I don't think Ryan Spann's going to want to make that same mistake. I think Anthony Smith was close to the belt, and now he's not, I don't know. I listened to their podcast, and love Anthony Smith, love his personality, love him as a person. Just don't think his motivation is the same. I mean, he's making money now. He works for ESPN. He's on the commentator panel, the analysis panel, and yeah, I feel like I think Ryan Spann. We'll probably do my picks video after this, so I'll release another short 1 minute video of me giving my rundown picks on this next fight. You could take and do what you want with my picks and try to win some money with it. A lot of great fights in this card, though. I was looking at this this morning. We record this on a Sunday, day after. Who else does this? Who else wakes up after a pay-per-view, going to bed at 2:30 in the morning, watching? This is literally, like, I literally sit there after a pay-per-view, 2:30 in the morning, eyes want to just shut and go to bed, but I watch as much of the post press conference as I can. It's always interesting to hear Dana White's views. You kind of get a good idea of what's going to happen going forward with that. You hear the fighters that just fought, their emotions. It's interesting stuff. It all plays a part. And so yeah, and then this morning I'm checking out this upcoming card, thinking, all right, obviously Max is on. It's going to be exciting for the main event. But what we got on the undercard, and we got good fights. We got Giga Chikadze, famous Georgian fighter, amazing grappler, well-rounded guy, tall, rangy guy, taking on Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy. Alex Caceres, rangy, long guy in his own right, jiu-jitsu black belt, amazing personality, amazing hair, Brazilian fighter, amazing matchup, can't wait for that. Erin Blanchfield taking on Tyler Santos. Now, for female mixed martial arts, that is a great matchup. Erin Blanchfield is looking like the dark horse, a destroyer, just making it look easy against hard opponents like Jessica Andrade coming off her last win. Tyler Santos, notable fight for her is fighting for the belt against Valentina Shevchenko, who, in my personal opinion, I think Tyler Santos kind of edged that fight out and won with all those takedowns and control. They gave it to the champ. One of those you got to beat, to be the champ, you got to beat the champ situations, I think. Or maybe just the judges suck and they got it wrong, which is usually the situation. But that's a great matchup. I love Tyler Santos' fighting style. Erin Blanchfield, strong, wrestle-heavy girl, decent striking in her own. That's going to be a great fight, and that's like one of the first fights on that card. Junior Tafa coming on, who is back on the card, just recently got a horrendous eye poke. The fight had to end. Now he's coming back, fighting a different opponent, Parker Porter. That's the main card right there. Trying to think. Yeah, we got Baby Polish Power on the undercard. I saw. And that's what next week is looking like. And 2 back-to-back great cards. A whole bunch of weeks in a row we got coming up of fights. more pay-per-views in the distance. We got Israel Adesanya coming, fighting Sean Strickland soon. We're making our way into fall, man. Inching up on that Madison Square Garden card. Before you know it, the winter will be here, and the end of the year always ends on bangers. So exciting time for sports. Like I said, football season's back. Fly Eagles fly. Yeah, and I can't wait to come back next week and talk to you about this Max Plus Holloway against Korean Zombie fight and the whole card. So yes, I'm here for it all. Yeah, and that's it. We'll leave you on that note. Cue the music. Thank you for tuning in if you did. Follow me at Caution to the Airwaves on no longer Twitter, but X, and on Instagram. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Trying to do my best impersonation of a content creator out here. I feel good about this one. I'm happy to be back. I hope you enjoyed. Take care. Bye.